Hey everybody, welcome back. Thanks for tuning in or watching this video on demand. Um, so the first three streams I've been covering a lot of mental diet. The last stream was a little bit of a mix, and I wanted to pick a more topical stream where Neville just reiterated and told some personal experiences related to the concept of um, not letting the what's going on now, the exterior world, become permanent. Don't entrench it. Don't give it any more attention than you need to, but instead to stay focused on what you would prefer to experience. This lecture in particular, the one we're doing today, Changing the Field of I think is really, really important, especially for people new to this material, because one of the one of the really tips that Neville gives you, and sort of one of the organizational ideas of what he's sharing, is that everything emanates from your consciousness. Um, um, you have to think of it. You have to redefine it so that it's not, um, so that you're not dismissing it as egoic or something. But you are the you're emanating all of it. So how you think about yourself is primarily what's determining what you're experiencing. Whether that is personally how people treat you, your position in life, what career you have, whether or not you're married, or the standing you have in your community, how many friends you have, all that stuff, or more generally, like in a bigger picture sense, how is your surrounding society, just on the more specific local level, but then on the bigger level, like what kind of news are you encountering about the world at large? Where is your awareness drawn? It's all emanating from your thoughts and your focus. Um, I listened to it might well, I recommend you watch it. I came across a Reverend Ike video a couple days ago. Um, I think it's called "Is What You Are Fascinated With Ruining Your Life?" And he very quickly redirected it to show you how to redirect your mind, and then interviewed a young guy who was able to get fascinated with success, because his point is people can spend a lot of time being fascinated with really somber and malevolent aspects of reality. You can get fascinated by, example he gave was poverty. But you can also get fascinated by sadness, by defeat, by sickness, um, and really, in other words, and really bring too much of that into your day to day life. Now, I think keeping that in mind, it's not like you shouldn't enjoy certain kinds of stories, and you shouldn't, like, obviously, if you're a medical professional, you need to study certain things, certain forms of disease. But the idea is that don't assume that for yourself. Don't only think of yourself that way, or don't think that it's somehow inevitable that some misfortune is going to befall you, because it's not. You're the one that's creating that. Um, and so changing the feeling of I is about recalibrating that sense of who you are, what's possible for your life, what's possible for the people in your life, what's possible for the world at large, as a result of recalibrating how you think of yourself. Um, one of the other things I wanted to talk about in the beginning uh, of this particular one is, for anyone who's new to this material, as you keep going, as you keep wanting to learn more, and as you keep applying what you've been taught, you're going to come across techniques. You're going to come across, and I give suggested exercises here too. Um, and you will pretty quickly find um, that people really ritualize aspects of, um, they really just ritualize this way of thinking about the world. In other words, They might develop a very specific system that works for them and really strongly advocate that you do the exact same, or you're not going to get the result. Don't take that on. I mean, I know I gave this precaution last week, and don't think that the technique is what's doing all the work. It's your mind doing all the work. The technique is just a way to draw the focus of the mind to something you prefer as opposed to something you don't prefer. And the thing that you really want to keep in mind is that um, when it concerns these sort of these little habits that people encourage you to develop, well, you've already been manifesting your whole life. So instituting a bunch of new rituals and habits into your life is not necessary at all. At its core, and that's why I went to the mental diet lectures first, the whole point of this is just to be a better director of your thoughts. You're already visualizing things anyway, you're already thinking a million thoughts a day anyway. The idea is just to, coach them, to direct them, to move them where you'd want them to go as opposed to where you don't want them to go. To just be literally just be more mindful, and be more conscious and goal oriented when it comes to your daily thoughts. That said, the sort of specific techniques and rituals that Neville advocates for, that is also echoed by plenty of other advocates of this mode of thinking, Reverend Ike being definitely one, and then also Joseph Murphy, is there's a pretty important time of day as you two times a day, as you fall asleep and as you wake up, and in that liminal place, in that place between places, that's when you can really learn in the moment focus of your mind, and that's when you can really get closer to seeing you can really fall into an ideal state. And those are the times when you can, as Neville uses the metaphor of impressing the subconscious, those are times when you can really deeply, immediately impress the subconscious and not worry about did you do it or not. The broad advice that Neville gives a lot is never go to sleep in anger. To always be in the nicest state of mind you can fall into as you're falling asleep, and it's the same applies when you wake up. When you wake up, don't immediately go to your phone and go look at a million emails and just lose your mind immediately. Take control of your mind during that time, and if there's a preferred way you like to imagine your ideal day or your overall ideal life, do it then, whether it's visualizing or hearing things people would say to you, or just repeating certain phrases and affirmations you like, or just really falling deeply into a really desirable and reassuring and empowering feeling. Whatever way you like to do it, those are two times of the day when you really should take advantage of that sort of closeness to your deeper self and a more holistic integration of who and what you are and what you're capable of. Those are the times to really hone in on what you want to experience. I know we talked about last week, Neville had told the story of his father did that, and so did his brother. They both would plan their day at the beginning of the day. His dad would do it at the table in the morning. He didn't close his eyes. He said the way to do it for him was keep your eyes half open. And that's when he would plan his day and have conversations with people ahead of the day. And once he knew that he had all the conversations he wanted to have and had them the way he wanted to have them, then he would head into town and start start going about his normal business. Now that kind of so to give an example of the kind of things you're going to come across, and only take on the ones you like, is that is the close your eyes versus leave your eyes half open or imagine with your eyes open. None of them works better than the other. Neville says in lectures too, like, you can imagine as you're walking down the street, like there's no limitation. You don't have to be in any special ritualized space to imagine and to successfully manifest whatever you've imagined. You can be doing literally anything and just put your mind so strongly in that spot that you identify with it and that you now decide this is part of what you're going to experience, and you will. Also, before I forget, let me give a shout out to Campbell, who wrote the music for this stream. Shout out for Campbell Kid. Anybody watching this at any point in time, I'm sure he'll be doing them for a while. Every Saturday at 3:30 Central Standard, 4:30 Eastern. Is that 1 Pacific, 1:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Campbell streams with his trio. They're super dope. Check them out. He did the music for the stream. So yeah, that's the shout out. But yeah, that's the really only thing I want to start off with today is, don't think that you have to do things a certain way. The way that you most enjoy doing it, the way you find to make the most sense to you intuitively and instinctually, or looking back on how you've had success in the past and trying to remember what thoughts led you up to that. Go with that over what anybody else says. Now, at the same time, if you find a technique that is like, whoa, I wish I'd been doing this, for 20 years or whatever, then yeah, obviously implement it. Don't be closed off to it, but at the same time, don't think that you have to do it a certain way or it's not going to work, because that's just totally not true. And just in general, I always have to remind myself, it's okay for other people to have different ways of imagining. Obviously, we should be encouraging the diversity of technique as it concerns, being a master of your own thoughts. Come up with as many techniques as possible. So I'm not technique shaming anybody, but the point is, follow your own sense of what is right for you there. All right, let's get straight into this lecture. I keep adjusting my monitor this stream. The main student experience that he shares here is pretty emotional. If you were looking forward to one where I'm probably gonna cry, here you go. It's early on, because I think the experience he shares that this student had is pretty moving and powerful. Okay, Changing the Feeling of I from 1953. For the benefit of those who were not present last Sunday, let me just give you a quick summary of the thoughts expressed here. We claimed that the world was a manifestation of consciousness, that the individual's environment, circumstances, and conditions of life were only the outpicturing of the particular state of consciousness in which that individual abides. Let me just make sure my mic's on. Therefore, the individual sees whatever he is by virtue of the state of consciousness from which he views the world. Any attempt to change the outer world before he changes the inner structure of his mind is to labor in vain. I think that's one of the more important Neville quotes, though so many of his quotes are important. That's why the database has been taking forever, because every lecture I read, I end up being like, well, I could technically put every sentence of this somewhere in this quotes database, but I think this is an important one to understand and to embrace. Any attempt to change the outer world before he changes the inner structure of his mind is to labor in vain. Everything happens by order. Those who help or hinder us, whether they know it or not, are servants of that law, which constantly shapes outward circumstances in harmony with our inner nature. We asked you last Sunday to distinguish between the individual identity and the state they occupy. The individual identity is the Son of God. It is that I speak of you or to you, or speak of myself. I mean really our imagination. That is permanent. It fuses with state and believes itself to be the state with which it is fused, but at every moment of time it is free to choose the state with which it will be identified. And that brings us to today's subject, changing the feeling of I. And I hope I will not get the same reaction that is recorded in the 6th chapter of the Gospel of John. For we are told that when this was given to the world, they all left him, leaving just a handful behind. For when he told them there was no one to change but self, they said, "This is a hard, hard teaching. It's a hard thing. Who can hear it?" For he said, "No man cometh unto me, save I call him." And then it's recorded when he repeated it 3 times, they left him, never again to walk with him. And he turned to the few who remained and asked them, "Would you also go?" And they answered and said, "To whom would we go? You have the word of eternal life." In other words, it's so much easier when I can blame another for my misfortune, but now that I am told that no man cometh unto me save I call him, that I am the sole architect of my fortunes and misfortunes, it's a difficult saying, and so it's recorded. It's a hard saying. Who can hear it? Who can grasp it? And who will believe it? And so he said, "And now I sanctify myself, that they also be sanctified through the truth. For if this is the truth, then there is no one to change, no one to make whole, no one to purify, but self." Related to this, I came across a pretty cool James Baldwin quote. Here it is. "I imagine one of the reasons people cling to their hate so stubbornly is because they sense once hate is gone, they will be forced to deal with pain." I think that ties in perfectly with Neville's saying here. And one thing I'm very aware of is a lot of times when people ask questions about, it's essentially about Elohim, about it, to give a way someone would state this, they would say, "Well, aren't we creating collectively? Like, am I really responsible for everything that's happened in my life? Like, aren't some things other people?" And that is all, like, no matter how they state it, all I hear them telling me is, I don't want to take credit for something awful that happened, either to them or to someone they know or whatever. They just don't want to take credit for it, and they don't want to take responsibility for changing it. So they're asking this question to weasel their way out of it. But the fact is, you did it. I mean, I went through a whole sort of grieving process where I had to accept that I had done certain things, and that certain, and it's not complete. And I also don't think it's a necessary thing to do in order to move into your ideal state, to like have this whole sort of reckoning with your past and with your prior manifestations. Actually, Neville advises not to do that at all. He advises don't look back. But I did have that experience of, at least acknowledging it. If I couldn't have a peace with it, at least acknowledge it, because some things I don't have a peace with, I still want to revise them or just never think about them again. Like, I want them totally out of consciousness, but in the meanwhile, I do at least accept that it was my doing. And I recognize that fully that there's going to be a ton of people here who are like the ones who left when Jesus first said this. You know, they all left him, leaving just a handful. If you're one of the ones that wants to leave and say, "I don't take credit for all the bad shit that happened to me," fine. Fine, I don't care, stay asleep. But if you do want to change your life, you don't have to take credit for those things. You can at least take responsibility for the good that you're going to create now. But the flip side of that is, yeah, you did do it all. And so we start with the I. Most of us are totally unaware of the self that we really cherish. We have never taken one good look at the self, so we don't know the self, for the I has neither face, form, nor figure, but it does mold itself into structure by all that it consents to, all that it believes. And few of us know really what we do believe. We have no idea of the unnumbered superstitions and prejudices that go to mold this inner formless I into a form which is then projected as a man's environment as the conditions of life. So here, read it carefully when you go home. "No man cometh unto me, save I call him. You didn't choose me, I have chosen you. No man can take away my life, I lay it down myself. There is no power to take from me anything that is part of the inner arrangement of my mind. All that you gave me I have kept, and none is lost, save the son of perdition or the belief in God. And because nothing can be lost but the belief in loss, I will not now assume loss of anything you have given me that is good. And so I sanctify myself, that they be sanctified through the truth. I think that's a really dense paragraph there. Um, the bit about nothing can be lost, we're going to address in other lectures to a better degree, because the concept of loss um, is in all cases an illusion. So creation is finished, the acts are done. Everything, you're not restricted from accessing and experiencing anything in creation. You're just not. Um, the illusion of loss is your own self-imposed experience. Now, the mystery of death we're gonna tackle separately, because that's, I think, very different from other forms of loss. Um, but the idea here is that nobody else has power over you. Um, Nobody else can take something away from you which you've claimed as true of yourself. All right. And now, how do we go about changing the I? First of all, we must discover the I, and we do this by an uncritical observation of self. This will reveal a self that will shock you. You will be altogether, I wouldn't say afraid, but ashamed to admit you've ever known such a lowly creature. And had it been God Himself who drew near in this despicable form, you would have denied Him 1,000 times before a single cock would crow. You couldn't believe that this is the self that you've carried around and protected and excused and justified. Then you start changing this self after, by an uncritical observation, you make the discovery of that self. For the acceptance of self is the essence of the moral problem of the world. It is the epitome of a true outlook on life, for it is the sole cause of everything you observe. Your description of the world is a confession of self that you do not know. You describe another, you describe society, you describe anything, and your description of the thing you observe reveals to one who knows this law the being you really are. So you must first accept that self. When that self is accepted, then you can start to change. It's so much easier to take the virtues of the gospel and apply them as the word of life, to love the enemy, to bless those who curse us, and to feed the hungry. But when man discovers the being to be fed, the being to be clothed, the being to be sheltered, the greatest enemy of all is that self, then he is ashamed, completely ashamed that this is the being, for it was easier to share with another something that I possess, to take an extra coat and give it to another. But when I know the truth, it's not that. I start with the self, having discovered, and start with change of that self. All right, this paragraph is almost too dense to go into right now, because he's talking about some deeper aspects of Elohim, and about the concept that we are all one entity, that everything you observe, everything you experience, every person you interact with is all God. There's actually no separation. So it's all the self. But we'll leave it at just that statement right there, because I don't want to go too deeply into Elohim right now. There's better discussions of it, especially in Prayer, the Art of Believing. If anyone's really interested in that, check out the book Prayer, the Art of Believing. All right, now let me tell you a story. A few years ago in the city, I was giving a series of lectures down near that lake. I can't even recall the name of the lake, but it was some Parkview Manor was the place where I spoke, and in that audience was a gentleman who sought an audience before the meeting. And we went across the street into the little park there, and he said to me that he had an insoluble problem. I said, "There's no such thing as an insoluble problem," but he said, "You do not know my problem. It's not a state of health, I assure you. It is, look at the skin that I wear." I said, "What's wrong with it? It looks lovely to me." He said, "Look at the pigment of my skin. I, by the accident of birth, am now discriminated against. The opportunities for progress in this world are denied me. just because of the accident of birth, that I was born a colored man. Opportunities for advancement in every field, neighborhoods that I would like to live in and raise a family, I could move in. Where I would like to open up a business, I could move into that area. I promised y'all emotional moment. Um, then I told him my own personal experience that I came to this country. Well, I didn't have that problem, but I was a foreigner in the midst of all Americans. I didn't find it difficult, yet as he reminded me, but that's not my problem, Neville. Others have come here speaking with an accent, but they haven't my skin, and I was born an American. Then I told him of an experience of mine in New York City. If I were called upon to name a man that I would consider my teacher, I would name Abdullah. I studied with that gentleman for 5 years. He had the same color skin, the same pigment as this gentleman. He would never allow anyone to refer to him as a colored man. He was very proud of being a Negro and didn't want any modification of what God had made him. He turned to me and said, "Have you ever seen a picture of the Sphinx?" I said, "Yes." He said, "It embodies the four fixed quarters of the universe. You have the lion, the eagle, the bull, and man. And here is man that is the head. The crown of that creature called the Sphinx, which still defies man's knowledge to unriddle it, was crowned with a human head. And look carefully at the head, Neville, and you will see whoever modeled that head must have been a Negro. Whoever modeled it had the face of a Negro, and if that still defies man's ability to unravel it, I am very proud that I am a Negro. I have seen scientists, doctors, lawyers, bankers from every walk of life seek an audience with old Abdullah. And everyone who came thought themselves honored to be admitted to his home and to receive an interview. If he was ever invited out, and he was always the honored guest. He said, "Neville, you must first start with self. Find self. Don't be ashamed ever of the being you are. Discover it and start changing. Start the changing of that self." By the way, Abdullah, we'll have more Abdullah stories. For people that are new, Abdullah was one of the people who taught Neville earlier in life before he started lecturing. Who Abdullah is not confirmed. At this point, the only confirmation otherwise of Abdullah's existence is that Joseph Murphy also studied with him, and potentially that Walter C. Lanyon wrote a book called Abd Allah, Potter and Healer, or Healer and Teacher, that is possibly about Abdullah. I haven't read it yet, but there's no confirmation of who Abdullah was and if he lived. But I know the historian Mitch Horowitz has said, based on the fact that he verified a bunch of other facts about Neville's life, a bunch of the other experiences he relayed in lectures, that he doesn't doubt that Abdullah did exist. Like, Abdullah is not someone Neville made up to tell, to tell little moralistic story, to tell little parables. Abdullah did exist and did teach Neville, as far as we know. We just don't know who. We don't have a picture of him. We don't know for sure, yeah, this guy was Abdullah. All right. Well, I told this gentleman exactly what Abdullah had taught me, that there was no cause outside of the arrangement of his own mind. If he was discriminated against, it was not because of the pigment of his skin, though he showed me signs as large as all outdoors, denying him access to a certain area. The sign is there only because in the minds of some men, such patterns are formed, and they draw unto themselves what now they would condemn, that there is no power outside of the mind of man to do anything to man, and he, by the arrangement of his own mind, by consenting to these restrictions in his cradle, and being conditioned slowly through his youth, waking into manhood, believing himself set upon, would have to be set upon, but no man cometh unto me, save I call him. So he's just saying these frames of mind are conditioned, and they take, and after a long period of being indoctrinated and believing that, you just assume that's the way the world is, but that's not necessarily so. So then someone comes to condemn or to praise. They couldn't come unless I call them. Not a man called Neville, but that secret being that is not called Neville. The secret being that is the sum total of all my beliefs, all of the things that I consent to that form a pattern of structure. That secret being draws unto itself things in harmony with itself. Well, that man went away and wrestled with himself. He couldn't believe everything I told him, not that night, but last Sunday morning in the lobby, he came forward and we renewed the friendship. He took me next door to show me the fruit of this teaching. He said, Neville, it took me almost 3 years to really overcome that fixed idea that I, by the accident of birth, would be a secondary citizen. But I overcame it. Now here's my office on Wilshire Boulevard. I picked this one not because it was the only one offered, for equally wonderful spots were offered me. I took this one because it had greater telephone facilities, but the others were equally good. Now here's my office. Now you couldn't judge my income from this office, lovely as it is. Everything is nice about it, but Neville, this year I will net $250,000. Well, in America, that is still a fabulous sum of money. It would be staggering in any other part of the world, but even in fabulous America, a man to net $250,000 is really up in the very highest of brackets. And that was the man that a few years ago told me the whole vast world was against him by reason of the accident of birth. He knows now he is what he is by virtue of the state of consciousness with which he is identified. And the choice is his to go back to the restrictions of his childhood when he believed the story or to continue in the freedom that he has found. So you and I can be anything in this world we desire to be if we will clearly define our aim in life and constantly occupy that aim. It must be habitual. The concept we hold of self that is noble must not be put on just for a moment and taken off when we leave this church. We feel free here. We feel that we have something in common. But that's why we are here. But are we going to wear the noble concept we now hold of self when we go through the door and enter that bus? Or are we going to return to the restrictions that were ours prior to coming here? The choice is ours, and the hardest lesson to learn is that there is no one in this world that can be drawn into your world unless you and you alone call him. Let me take a break for a drink here. And I will say, I don't think Neville talked about it here, but there's a broader responsibility that everyone has to, as the John frickin' Lennon song says, to imagine a world where, there is no prejudice. People aren't being restricted from, the basic means and ways of life just because of, some label you're going to put on them based on whatever, That's all our sort of duty and responsibility. That's all our out picturing. And it's not that you necessarily have any kind of racism or sexism or whatever, or, prejudice against other people. It's that you assume other people do, period. And the more you think about how much hate there is in the world, the more you're going to notice that and encounter that. And the more you assume that, oh, well, these people, they're especially hateful, and they're especially hateful towards these other people. Well, you're just summoning a whole a whole world of those experiences, and sometimes it's a little bit difficult. It can feel overwhelming to want to address that, to think of some kind of way, to think of, if it's even possible to think of a scene that could holistically heal that kind of long pain, because it's just this giant. The James Baldwin quote really summed it up perfectly. It's just, these, you have like centuries of pain, of imaginary pain, that is there, that you assume is quite real because people did die, people did suffer. So you're being shown this experience that is quite horrible. So to turn from that and say, yeah, that is there or that isn't there, and what I prefer to see and experience is this instead. Like to give up on that, hate, to experience the pain of it and then give up on the pain of it, can be such a daunting experience that no one wants to confront it or do it. And sometimes it's just a matter of, well, how the hell do you even do it? How would you even, like, if you've been so conditioned for so long to think that this is the way the world is, how do you turn from it? How do you see a better world? And I think bringing it back to the feeling of yourself, how you're changing your life on a more personal day-to-day level, and applying that to the things at large, is a practical way to do it. Um, I mean, this guy, it took him 3 years um, to recalibrate his sense of self and to let go of the assumption that um, he would be discriminated against. Um, I don't think that that's like unusual. Like I know there's many people in this space who want to talk about how you, when the second you claim the state, it's true. But the fact is, you can experience a battle. You can experience a back and forth. You can experience falling out of the state 1,000 times in one day. Uh, and so I don't think that's totally unusual for it to take that long. I don't think it would be even unusual or atypical if it took someone 30 years to, um, get set that straight within themselves. Um, that was a little bit of a total aside there. Um, but I know Neville didn't mention the sort of broader, bigger world aspect of it. And I would encourage anyone who's really willing to be daring in your imagination, as I did either last stream or stream before, don't restrict yourself just to your personal life. But I do think it's the kind of thing where, like, put your oxygen mask on first. Like, get settled within yourself, recalibrate your sense of self first before you really want to start tackling these bigger picture things. However, sometimes the bigger picture things are easier. I have noticed that myself because you can feel a sense of detachment from it. You can detach from the old states that are playing out so much easier than you can on something that, is you day to day. Um, all right, let's just go back to it. I had some other thought, but I lost it. We'll just go back to it. So do not do what they did thousands of years ago, for that is the beginning of the secession of the great truth. So we are told they turned away from it, never again to walk with it, and the few who remained didn't like it either. But where would they go if this is the word of eternal truth? Not that it's true for this day and age, not that it's true for this day and age, but this is the law of being, and in all the dimensions of my being it holds good. If this is eternally true, then let me learn the lesson now, though I wrestle with myself as he did for 3 years. So changing the feeling of I is a selective thing, because unnumbered states are infinite states, but the I is not the state. The I believes itself to be the state when it enters and fuses with it. So he was presented with the state, and without the faculty of discrimination in his youth, he fused with the state and believed these restrictions were true, and it took him 3 years to disentangle the I from these fixed ideas with which he had lived for so many years. Now, you may take only a moment, or you too may take your 3 years. I can't tell you how long it's going to take you, but I'll tell you this much. It can be measured by the feeling of naturalness. You can wear a feeling until it's natural. The moment the feeling becomes natural, it will begin to bear fruit within your world. I don't know what that weird ringing was. Um, it is a lot of this is a really important little paragraph here too. So here, when Neville says there are infinite states, but the I is not the state, that's another foundational teaching here. Being that creation is finished, there's infinite things to experience. Um, but imagination, I am, your sense of self, um, it's not any of the. It's not it. It is its own independent entity. But when you marry it to any given experience, to any given state, it becomes so deeply entangled with it that you think that's what you are. So, to give an example here, if you've been, as Neville would say, behind the 8 ball, you've been broke for a long time, it becomes your identity. And you have so many thoughts about it, so many beliefs about it, that is who you are. You're always broke. You because look, if you're someone who is broke a lot, how many times have you thought or even told somebody I'm broke? All right, okay, you're creating that for yourself. You fuse with that state. You could just as easily say I'm loaded, because I know that's what people would say. Instead of saying I'm rich, they say I'm loaded or I'm rich as fuck. you could just as easily identify with that, fuse with that, as you could I'm broke. Um, but you, if you've had that experience consistently, and you have all these built up other assumptions and experiences as a result of that for 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, 60 years, I know some of you out there, um, it's going to seem like it's a real mountain to let go of it. But look, just try it. Just start trying it with little things. Just start imagining an extra $100 every week, an extra 200 this month, an extra grand this week, something, anything to show yourself that you can recalibrate your sense of wealth there. All right, let's move back into it. Oh, well, this is important. The moment the feeling becomes natural, it'll begin to bear fruit within your world. That's a big key for money, because a lot of times these fantastical dreams of riches are not how you would feel if you actually had a bunch of money. Um, and then also, like, because I know a lot of people think about the lottery, about a sudden giant windfall, and they think that that is the answer. But really, the sort of habits and day to day thoughts of someone who is financially prosperous are totally different from that. Like trying to imagine this big whoop, this big whoosh, um, is not like a rich state of mind. Okay, I'll give an anecdote here. Unfortunately, I don't have a link for it, but Joe Dispenza tells an anecdote where he was out to lunch with a friend. Um, Joe Dispenza, for anyone to know, by the way, he's someone who teaches Neville type things from a more. He tries to back it up with science. He's a contemporary. He does lectures and seminars and stuff. Um, so he tells this anecdote where he's out to lunch with a friend, and the friend looks at his phone, puts the phone down, and is atypical, I guess, for this friend to check the phone or take a call or whatever while they're eating. And he noticed the friend gets a little quiet after this, and he asks him, "Hey, is anything wrong?" And the friend says, "Oh, I just lost everything. Bad business deal. I have no money. I'm wiped out. I just lost everything." And Joe is immediately trying to comfort him, like, "Are you okay? You gonna be okay?" And he tells him, "You don't understand. I lost all that money, but I am money. I'll make all that back and more in no time at all." And supposedly he did in like less than 2 years. And this was not a small amount of money, probably millions or whatever. Um, but that essential feeling of knowing, oh, I'll make the money back. You kidding me? I am money. That sense of self is something more um, like you'd want to take on in your consciousness, and just a confidence in yourself, just a knowing that money's always going to come. Money always comes through. Money always shows up. I always make more than I expect to make. People always appreciate whatever I provide. I'll always have a job. Those kind of confidence encouraging thoughts, instead of thinking, I never have enough, money's always tight, money's always, it's always flowing out too quickly, there's never enough. All of those thoughts, you need to get rid of those. You start flipping those immediately. That's it. That's the secret right there. All right, so I told this story at a small gathering here in the city, and not very many asked questions about it, but 3 people asked. But he must have had money before. He must have known the right people. He must in some way have had some substance to start it, because how can you go out to loan $100 million and call that a real fact of being, that you have that to loan, and tell me you didn't have someone who had it, or you yourself didn't have it? I did not ask the gentleman about the individual facts of the case. I went to the office, I saw it, I didn't look at his books. He volunteered this information and gave me the figure of $250,000 net for the year. I have not checked or in any way verified the statement. I believe it implicitly. But I will not go along with those who believe that unless you have certain things to start with, you can't apply this law. You can start now from scratch and choose the being you want to be. You aren't going to change the pigment of your skin, but you will find your accent or the pigment of skin or your so-called racial background will not be a hindrance. For if man is ever hindered, it can only be the state of consciousness in which he abides that hinders him. Man is freed or constrained by reason of the state of mind in which he persists. If you persist in it, well, then I will say, perish in it. But I warn you, no one cares, and that is an awful blow when a man discovers that no one but himself, really cares. So we find ourselves weeping with ourselves in the hope of getting others to weep with us. And what an awful shock when the day arrives, we discover that no one really ever cared. They will give us some little listening ear for a moment, just as they were passing by, but they didn't really care. When we make that discovery, we shake ourselves out of it and boldly appropriate the gift our Father gave us before that the world was. So let me show you the gift. You've read your Lord's Prayer possibly daily, but you read it as a prayer from a translation of a translation which does not reveal the sense of the evangelist. The real translation you will find in Farrar Fenton's work, where the original is written in the imperative passive mood, which is like a standing order, a thing to be done absolutely and continuously, so that you can now look upon your universe as one vast internet machinery where all things happen. There isn't a thing to become. All things are taking place. So it is written in this manner: Thy will must be being done. Thy kingdom must be being restored. It's a very strange mode of speech. It is the only way you could express it if you would express the imperative passive mood. But from the Latin from which our translation was made, there is no first aorist of the imperative passive mood. So we have it in the way we have it, but it does not reveal the intent of the mysteries. If you will see all things are now, you don't become, you simply select the state that you would occupy. Occupying it, you seem to become, but it is already a fact. Every aspect of that state, in its most minute detail, it's worked out and taking place. You, by occupying the state, seem to go through the action of unfolding that state, but the state is completely finished and taking place. So now you can choose the being that you want to be, and by choosing a being other than what you are now expressing, you start the change of the feeling of I. This is what, okay, this whole bit here. Alright, being real with y'all, I love thinking about these kind of things, racking my brain, trying to understand that, but I think there's a couple aspects of this that the human mind is literally not designed to comprehend. Elohim is one of them. The infinity of available experiences is also one of them, which is why you have the navigation, the imagination as a tool to navigate it. Mind, imagination is one thing. Neville is clear about that. Mind equals imagination. It's, that's your tool to sift through infinity. You can't comprehend it in and of itself. You have to have a little sorter built in. But then this is another thing which I don't think we're necessarily designed to understand. Because when you imagine something, even if the unfolding, as it's called, basically the unfolding is a series of events that takes place from when you imagine to when you experience it in your reality, that unfolding can take place in moments. It can take place over the course of days, weeks, months, years. But still, even if it is a matter of moments, there's still a series of events. There are still things which occur. So there's still this experience of moving through different states, different moments to end up at the desired state. But according to Neville, that is its own, that's an illusion as well. The state is there, it is complete, it is whole. Like, the way I think about states is a little bit different than the way some people think about it. So I know one useful concept that a lot of people have is that a state is basically a blanket assumption you have. So it's just kind of like one nice maxim, like everything in my life is so awesome. or like everything always works out for me. So they say, well, I'm gonna embody the state of everything always working out for me. Well, that's not actually a state, though that is a useful technique. A state is every infinitely divisible moment of time, everything in your physical reality, everything, like every atom that you can, like all of it that you see, all of the thoughts you're thinking. If you're in the room with somebody else, all of them, all of their inner life, all of their world, everything they're thinking, um, everything that, like, all of that, all of it is the state. And every infinitely divisible moment of time is yet another state. So it's like I could just do this with my pinky and we just move through infinite states, okay? That's how I conceive of states. That is really not helpful to people who are just finding this material. Um, I think the way you most people would think about it, like a state of mind, that's most useful, and like having that overarching assumption or belief that like dictates how your life is going to tend to go, and that being state of mind, that's how it's helpful to most people. But the more I read Neville, like my intuitive understanding of states was different because of the very fact that he says they're infinite. So infinite literally means it cannot be quantified. You cannot put a number on it. Like it is infinite. It is beyond numbers. There are so many. They are beyond numbers. They cannot be counted because they are beyond numbers. So that to me says that it's all like every little infinitely second, infinitesimal fraction of a fraction of a fraction of a second is actually a state. Um, I also understand why that would not be helpful to people, because then when it comes to things like visualizing, they're like, well, do I want to be in this state or in this state? And so that can create a lot more confusion than it does help. But I think overall, like thinking of it general is probably the way to go. Thinking of it in these oversimplified um, uh, things like rich, poor, uh, healthy, sick, in love, heartbroken, those kind of very basic um, dichotomies is the most useful way to go about this. So, for one, that a lot of people tend to experience the related to rich, poor, um, employed, unemployed, happy at your job, loathing your job, fulfilled in your career, totally unfulfilled by the work you do and hate it. Those are very simple states to think about, and I'm sure you have a personal idea already in mind and have had in mind for a while what it would feel like for you to have a job that you enjoy, that you look forward to doing, that fulfills a certain sense of meaning or importance or prominence that you want, or of helping the community at large, or, whatever you're going for there in your career, what the day to day would look like to fulfill that for you, and what your income would look like related to your career to make you feel, whatever you want to feel from money. So you already have those things in mind, whether it's a certain place you'd want to work, or a certain job title you would want, or just like a certain city and industry you really want to be in. You already have those things in mind, so you just need to start falling into states related to that. Start identifying yourself with that instead of, constantly denying yourself expression and experience of those given things. All right. So now, how will I know that I have changed the feeling of I? By beginning first with an uncritical observation of my reactions to life, and then noticing my reactions when I think I'm identified with my choice. If I assume that I am the man that I want to be, let me observe my reactions. If they are as they were, I have not identified with myself of my choice, for my reactions are automatic. And so if I am changed, I would automatically change my reactions to life. So the changing of the feeling of I results in a change of reaction. which change of reaction is a change of environment and behavior. But let me warn you now, a little alteration of mood is not a transformation. It's not a real change of consciousness. Because as I change my mood for the moment, it can quickly and rapidly be, I would say, replaced by another mood in the reverse direction. When I say that I was changed, as that gentleman changed his mood, his basic mood, his state of consciousness, it means that having assumed that I am what the moment denied, what my reason denied, that I remain in that state long enough to make that state stable, so that all of my energies are flowing from that state. I am no longer thinking of that state, I am thinking from that state, so that wherever a state grows so stable as to definitely expel all of its rivals, then that central habitual state of consciousness from which I think defines my character and is really a true transformation or change of consciousness. Whenever I reach that state of stability, watch my world mold itself then in harmony with this interchange, and men will come into my world, people will come to my aid, and they will think they are initiating the urge to help. They are playing only their part. They must do what they do because I have done what I did. Having moved from one state into the other, I have altered my relationship relative to the world around about, and that changed relationship compels a change in behavior relative to my world. So they have to act differently toward me. And I think just practically, when he's talking about if your reactions have changed or not, okay, so let's give a little example here. In a relationship, in a couple's relationship. So let's say you have moved into what you assume to be a pretty good state in your relationship. That for the most part, things are going well. You feel, secure, loved, all that good stuff. And you feel that they feel the same. Great. Things are most part fine. But one day you have an argument, and it's about something stupid. It's not some major thing. It's not some big thing. And in the past, you might have catastrophized and made that one little dispute mean a whole bunch of bigger things about your relationship, about you, about how your life goes, and really blown it up mentally in your mind so much that it jeopardized the relationship, ended the relationship, turned into bigger fights. That was a state you had been in. That was a state you wanted to get out of, right? So let's say that did happen and you broke up with the person. You haven't seen them in a while, and now you're back together and you guys have some little argument. If you go back in that old mood, break up the relationship again, you never really changed your state of consciousness. You changed it enough to have the relationship for a period of time, but not enough to have the long-term relationship you really desire. However, had you had a true transformation of self, really embodied the state of being in that long-term relationship, when you have this little fight, your thoughts would be more along the lines of, okay, well, that doesn't even matter. Like, he or she loves me so deeply, I already know that we're totally committed to each other. I know this doesn't matter in the scope of our relationship. They're going to forget about it by the end of the day. I've already, I don't have to worry about that. We don't have to fight about that. This means nothing about our relationship. This means nothing about me. I know that, I'm great. I know that they're great. I don't see them as any less as a result of this argument. It's just some little misunderstanding. It's just some little disagreement. It's healthy to have disagreements because, we can learn to have different opinions. Who can't? This is only going to make our relationship stronger. If those are more your thoughts, and you see that, yeah, you had some little dispute or argument, but it didn't turn into some big fight. It didn't end the relationship. It didn't, you're not calling a friend, crying about it. It was no big deal. And when it happened, you thought, oh, this is no big deal. This doesn't mean anything. This is not anything I need to worry about. If that was really what you thought and really how you felt, and then when you experienced, then you have changed your state of consciousness, undeniably. To make it a money thing, if you're in a situation where you have your own business, or you're someone who negotiates deals for a larger business, and you have a deal fall through, and it was a lot of money, and it meant maybe like a quarter or even a half of your revenue for the next couple months, and so it's a significant loss. On one hand, you could say, well, we're screwed. Like, this business might go under. That's it. And then manifest that. Or you could say, look, you know what, even if this deal doesn't go through, it's okay. Like, there's so many people that want to do business with us. We'll make that up in no time. And you know what? They might even change their mind and call me back next week and be like, yeah, actually, we need to go through with it. So if you'd moved into that latter state of mind, as opposed to the catastrophizing state, the first one I mentioned, that would be a true change of consciousness. So that's what he's talking about here when it comes to your reactions. So, like, basically, the guy he's talking about didn't say once, and sort of feel like, oh, I'm always treated with respect, but then just like totally forget about it. Like, he felt treated with respect for like that one afternoon, but then never entertained that state ever again, and went back to feeling persistently discriminated against, and was like, oh, well, I guess what Neville said isn't true, because yeah, I felt like respected that one day, but that was basically it. Well, he never really changed. He never really identified with being someone who's treated with respect. Who's treated with the proper reverence that any human is due. Okay. So in changing the I, you start with desire, which we will unfold and elaborate on tomorrow night. For it starts with desire. Desire is the spring of action. For you must want to be other than what you are. We fail because we do not fall in love enough with an idea. We aren't, I would say, moved enough to want to be other than what we are. If I could get you to be completely in love with some state to the point where it haunted your mind, I could almost prophecy that you would not in the distant future externalize that state within your world. And the reason we fail, we aren't hungry enough to change. For either we do not know the law, or we haven't the urge or the hunger to really bring about the change. For changing of the feeling of I results in the change of reaction, which change of reaction results in a change of world. If you like your world and you're complacent about it, you haven't started on the road of the mysteries. For the very first beatitude appears to one who is not complacent. Blessed are the poor in spirit. You must be poor in spirit, not complacent, not satisfied. The man who thinks that by reason of his birth, the religion that he inherited at birth, is good enough for me, that he is not dissatisfied, he is not, I would say, moved, that being complacent, and therefore he is not poor in spirit. He is very rich in spirit. Theirs is not the kingdom of God. For if I could stir you, make you dissatisfied with self, then you will recognize that self and set about to change it. For the only field of activity for man is within himself and on himself. You do not work on the other. The day you change self, you change your world. I think it's pretty plain here. He's clarifying that this does not mean poor as in lacking money, like being poor in your heart or whatever, but basically having a deficit of a deficit of contentment that causes this, that ignites this fire to experience more, to know more, to be more, to do more. Now I see my time is going to its quick end, and so in the remaining minute I have left here, let me not urge you, because if you come to the meeting tomorrow night not really hungry, you wouldn't benefit. But I do hope that many of you are there. Even if you are stirred to the point of trying to, I would say, disprove what I told you, I would accept that challenge, for in the attempt to disprove it, I know if you were sincere in your attempt, you would prove it. So I hope many of you will come to take this feast with us. We are here at the city at the Ebel for 15 nights. Okay, this is all just normal business. Tomorrow Night's Basic. Okay, this is another lecture. Is the importance tomorrow night to me is basic is the importance of defining an aim in this world, having a goal for without an aim you're aimless, and you were warned in the book, or I would say in the Epistle of James, that the double-minded man is unstable in all his ways. Let not such a man believe that he shall receive anything of the Lord, for he is like a wave that is driven and tossed by the wind. That man never reaches his goal. So you must have an aim, and tomorrow night we will show you the importance of defining desire. There are certain schools who teach you to kill out desire. We teach you to intensify desire and show you the reason for such teaching, show you what the Bible teaches about desire. Okay. I want to comment about that before we move on to this last bit. Why desire? Like overall, capital D, why desire? Why did Neville base a career? Why did Neville use desire as the lure? In one of the lectures, I think it's one of the ones that has light in the title. He is very plain that desire is what gets people's attention. If you want people to pay attention to you, tell them how to get the things they want. Now, why? Let's go even deeper on this. Why is that desire there? Now, Neville is plain. He says God communicates to man through the medium of desire. It's in one of the books. I forget which one. Now, you might want to start examining, like, what to you is desire. Like, go beyond words on it. Like, when you want something, when you feel drawn to something, when you have that intense burning desire for something, what is going on in you? I mean, I notice there's a natural sense of motivation. Depending on the thing, sometimes there's a lot of fear, but really if you examine those fears, the main fear there is of not having it or of losing it. And we're going to address more in the future about how loss is an illusion and how success is a guarantee. But my point is that very feeling of desire, that very burning thing that anybody poor in spirit can latch on a desire and totally be led to what they want if they so strongly focus their mind there. I mean, it is. I'm glad too. He mentions here the concept that, especially a lot of religions, a lot of societies, are very interested in the suppression and repression to the point of being oppressive, like to restricting desire, to limiting people's desires, often legally, even on things like simple pleasures like certain foods. This restriction of desire and its fulfillment is considered some sort of moral aspiration, some sort of something that is good to do. But Neville's very revolutionary in the sense that he's literally telling you that God is showing you, the God in you, which you are, is leading you through the experiences that before you became this entity you think of yourself now, the experiences that he wanted to have as you. Desire is the way that you are receiving that guidance from your deeper self. I think that's very intriguing. Very intriguing. Because especially the religion I grew up in wants to tell you that your desires are something to overcome. They're like an enemy to defeat. And Neville is telling you that your desires are promises that you're going to fulfill them. They are literally God telling you what you should be doing and promising you that if you accept it now, you will experience it. I think it's very revolutionary, and I had not encountered that kind of thought before, other than in a general sense, it being degraded, like in the sense of just like the general American idea of individualism and like even calling it selfish degrades it, but the idea that, in America you have a right to pursue your dreams on an individual level, that sort of pursuit is a virtue. Um, but I think even that gets degraded because it's considered selfish. It's considered to, be like a pursuit that is a little bit too vain, and that doesn't necessarily benefit everyone around you because you're too self-interested. Those kind of concepts. But Neville's literally telling you that's none of that is true. that's that's all a bunch of moralistic nonsense, a bunch of really bad assumptions that will really limit what you're going to allow yourself to experience in this life. That instead your desires are guides, that your desires are they're divine, they're totally divine, they're equivalent. Like this is a Reverend Ike concept that a friend had told me. Which, if you watch, hey, how's it going? That Reverend Ike said that really high-minded, really inspiring, good-feeling thoughts are angels. So if you have something you really want, and you have a thought about having it that feels so good, that's what an angel actually is. That's one of those things where it's like, that's wild, right? Like, it's not some spiritualistic entity. It's an experience you're having within right now. Okay. The last thing should probably be. Let me see if this is. So this is how he closes out the meetings, because he would usually give space for people to imagine, though not every lecture. And now we come to the help that many of you have asked for today. Those who were not here on Sunday, let me remind you is a very simple technique. As I told you on Sunday, any time that you exercise your imagination and do it lovingly on behalf of another, you are mediating God to man. So we sit quietly and we simply become imitators of our Father. And He called the world into being by being the thing He would call. And so we sit and we listen as though we heard someone congratulating us on having found what we seek. So we go to the end of the matter and we listen just as though we heard, and we look as though we saw. And we try in this manner to feel ourselves right into the situation of our answered prayer. And there we wait in the silence just for about 2 minutes. And so they will lower the lights to aid you. And let me remind you, if you want to clear your throat, please do so. If you want to shift your position in the chair, do so. Feel as though you are alone at home, because if you don't and you try not to disturb the neighbor, you will not be able to exercise your imagination on behalf of anyone. So now I will take the chair and just simply listen attentively, just as though you heard. I'll make you this promise. The day you are very still in mind and become very attentive, you will hear as coming from without what really you are whispering from within yourself. All right, and let's go into the silence. They would do their scene for like 2 minutes, and that would be the end of it. I thought he had a little bit more practical, direct exercises in this one. So I'll kind of give one here. What he's talking about here is a much larger overall process of confronting and altering the sense of self. It's something innumerable philosophers have written, dedicated their whole careers to. What am I? Who am I? Why am I? All that. So it's not like you're going to get it done in one afternoon, but let's pick 3 things. 3 things about yourself, and they can be different aspects. So they can be behaviors, they can be a standing in life, they can be a physical quality, they can be a certain relationship status right now that you don't particularly like. It can be any aspect of what you identify as your immediate self. So pick three things that are right now, the way they are manifested out and the way you think about them is not ideal. Far from your ideal. So let's say you're broke. There's one right there. You just need three. Let's pick three. And if you have been manifesting for a while, you've already done this. So let's pick three you haven't done anything about yet. Pick three that you want to change. And look, you know where you want. You know what you want. So just do the simple basic ass exercise he always tells you to do. If you had it, what would be happening? Your best friend, when they ask you about this thing, what are you going to tell them? So let's make a really simple job. You don't have a job or you have a job you hate. You get a new job, and it's a job you love. You make a lot of money. It's exactly what you've always wanted to do. You haven't talked to your best friend since you got this new job. However long that is, however y'all communicate, whatever. Y'all haven't talked since you got this new job. Y'all are talking right now. They ask you, hey, how's it going? I heard you got a new job, or, did you get a new job yet? However they would ask you that. And then you tell them. You tell them you got this new job. It is great. It is freaking awesome. I can't believe it. It's my dream job. And they say what they would say back. That is so great, man. I know you've wanted that for a long time. I know you've been applying it, whatever. Whatever they would tell you. Like, I always knew you would get this, blah, blah, blah. Whatever they would say in congratulations towards you, that's it. That's the scene. That's it. Do that with three things you want to change about yourself. Now, you can do more like general ones, like more sort of abstract ones if you'd like. Don't limit yourself in that way. Like if you just find you're pessimistic, this would be a great recalibration, because if that's something that you could adjust within yourself, your whole life would open up in so many different ways. So it's like you're just overly pessimistic, and you're by default pessimistic, and you want to adjust that. You want to at least minimize it, but ideally you want to move into being primarily an optimistic person. Well, if that is something that has changed about who you are and how you view the world, people are going to notice. Your best friend's going to notice, your partner's going to notice, your parents are going to notice, your coworkers are going to notice. Pick one of them, we can go with the best friend again, and they can just say, wow, you just seem like so much more positive lately. That's it. That is it. How does it feel for your best friend to genuinely notice that you are more positive? And how does it feel that when they tell you that, you're thinking, yeah, you're right, I am. I changed my mind. I'm totally different now. Like, I'm way more focused on things going right for me and things going right for the whole world. Like, it's just a natural shift I went through. I'm way more positive now. How does that feel? So these don't have to be complicated. They don't have to be hard. Like, I spend a lot of time overcomplicating my scenes. And hey, that's something I could shift. I could say, look, I don't overcomplicate things anymore. It's so easy for me to naturally shift into new and better and positive states all the time. I don't need to spend a lot of time worrying about the scene. I just, boom, do the simple thing and it works. Because that was what was happening with me. And then I got a little bit too preoccupied with, this line isn't right or that isn't right. And trying to rewrite too much shit instead of just, let's just do the basic thing. It's not hard. Let's just imagine it, loop it a couple times until you identify with it. That's it. That's it. So pick three aspects of yourself you want to change that you haven't done anything about yet. If you already done scenes, you already written a bunch of affirmations, you already done whatever you do, you already had mental conversations about it. Don't include any of those right now. Pick three that you haven't dealt with yet. And if one of them is a tough one, even better. Like if you're one of the people I talk to that's been, imagining and manifesting consciously for a long period of time, let's do one of the tough ones. And you can let me know, because we talk, what the tough one is you picked and what your result is like. All right, I think that pretty much wraps it up today. I feel like this is a very verbose one. I really hope that a lot of the times where I'm pulling away from the text to give my understanding of it and sort of my sort of rants about it are helpful. Um, because really what I want is I forgot I didn't put myself back in the we'll close out in the chat time. I know people like the chat time scene. I do like it better than the showing the text too. But so anyway, my point is like when people are watching this stream, kind of the vibe I'm going for is just like I'm your friend trying to explain this to you. So I mean, look, a lot of people do narration videos, and those are great. Those I love those. I've listened to so many of those. Um, but this is more supposed to be conversational. Like either you don't know anything about Neville, and I'm trying to break it down to you, or you do know, and we're going over it, and we're just like giving ourselves the reminders that we know we need. Because there's certain things that because of the nature of mind, you're gonna forget consciously, and periodically you need to be reminded of it. The other one of the things is I listen back to these just for technical reasons, but also my main motivation is I forget. I was like, I said that. It's like I'm right. That's something I need to remember today. So it's like I know it has that ability for me too, to give me the reminders I know I want. Today we're gonna close out with the melodramatic one's more appropriate, so we'll close with that. Um, Thursday, I'm gonna do Thursday, so I'm gonna try to move to doing Saturday, Tuesday, Thursday, because I've just been doing Wednesday, Saturday. But I'm gonna adjust that to be doing Saturday, Tuesday, Thursday. So Thursday, 2 days from now, I'll do another one. I mean, I'm setting it at 4 again this time, but those Tuesday, Thursday time slots are open to change because right now I'm just trying to find what's convenient for more people. And I know, obviously, like, eventually people from all over the planet are already, I mean, I know that at least one person overseas who's watching, so relative to where I live, but so I'm trying to figure out what are good times, like, and then how could I set up the times where, like one day I can catch these people and the other day I can catch these people, type of deal. Because I mean, you can always watch the video on demand, and I'll put them up on YouTube too. But sometimes it's nice to have the interaction. As more people watch and listen in, there'll be more of that interaction going on in the chat. So I want people to have that convenient ability to get into that. But Thursday 4 p.m. and then Saturday 8 p.m. I may eventually change that one too, because it'd be cool in the future if, as Campbell's ending, he could raid my stream every now and then, or on like the days he's not going to raid, I'll do it later. But on the days he is going to raid, he can raid me and like move into my stream. That would be cool. But for now, Thursday 4 p.m., Saturday 8 p.m. If you watch the video on demand, if you tune in today, thank you so much. I appreciate it quite a lot. And we're going to close out with the melodramatic ending.